Fort Ridge Military Base had seen its fair share of egos, incompetent officers, and loud-mouthed soldiers, but nothing compared to the storm about to hit its classroom. A Monday morning leadership meeting was underway, a room full of soldiers in uniform, some sipping coffee, others pretending to listen to. A smug captain pacing in front of them, Captain Reynolds, a man who believed he was the center of the universe. He tapped his folder loudly against the table. All right, listen up. Today we're getting inspected by a specialist from DC, but according to this memo, he held it up theatrically. She doesn't arrive until noon. The soldiers chuckled. Reynolds continued, so until then I'm in charge, and all of you better. The door opened. Everyone turned. A woman walked in wearing simple training pants, a fitted t-shirt, and a ponytail. No uniform, no badges, no rank, no insignia, just calm confidence. Every soldier stared, some smirked, some rolled their eyes. She didn't introduce herself, didn't salute, didn't explain. She simply walked to the front row and sat down. Captain Reynolds raised an eyebrow. Ma'am, I think you're lost." She didn't respond. He cleared his throat louder. "This is a closed leadership briefing. Civilian PT classes are down the hall." Still no response. Reynolds laughed. A few soldiers joined in, but the woman remained perfectly calm. Reynolds approached her, hands on his hips. "Ma'am, this is a military meeting. You can't just stroll in here wearing gym clothes." She looked up at him for half a second. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Her voice was cool, controlled, confident. Reynolds frowned. "Oh, really? And what are you supposed to be here for? Yoga class?" Some soldiers snickered. She stood slowly, not aggressively, not nervously. Just enough to meet his height. "Captain," she said, "you should be careful speaking to officers you haven't identified yet." Reynolds burst into laughter. "Officers, you're not wearing a uniform, sweetheart. The only thing you're commanding is a treadmill." The room erupted with laughter, except one soldier, Private Malik, whose eyes lingered on her posture, her stance, her unshakable calm. Something felt off. She didn't look like someone lost. She looked like someone measuring the room. Reynolds shook his head and waved her off. "Please, ma'am, leave before security has to remove you." But the woman didn't move. She looked directly into his eyes. "I'm not leaving." Reynolds' face hardened. "Fine," he said, flipping his folder open. "If you're not leaving, then at least tell us your name so we know who to report for trespassing." She folded her arms behind her back, a military stance. Her voice dropped into command mode. "Lieutenant Commander Sarah Briggs." Silence. Every soldier blinked. Reynolds stared in disbelief. He laughed again, too loudly, too nervously. "Oh, that's cute. And what branch are you pretending to be a commander of?" "Naval Special Warfare." The room's mood shifted instantly. Some soldiers stiffened. Some swallowed hard. One dropped his pen. Reynolds rolled his eyes. "No, no, no. Navy SEAL officers don't walk around barefoot wearing gym shirts. You're not a commander. You're not even a soldier. You probably wandered in here from the fitness center." Briggs tilted her head slightly. "You think rank is clothing, Captain?" Reynolds flushed red. "Rank," he snapped, "is a symbol of discipline and respect. And right now you look like a civilian trying to impress people." Briggs stepped forward. "I came like this on purpose." The room leaned in. Reynolds raised a brow. "Oh, and why would Commander walk into my meeting like this? To see how your unit treats someone they think outranks them." He scoffed. "Outranks, Princess? Nobody in this room outranks me except the Colonel." Private Malik's eyes widened. He whispered under his breath, "She's testing us." Reynolds ignored him and stepped closer. "You claim to be a commander. Prove it." Briggs didn't flinch. She pulled out a small black envelope, thick, sealed, embossed with gold lettering. She handed it to Reynolds. He snatched it arrogantly. "What's this, a fake badge, a cosplay ID?" He tore it open and immediately froze. The soldiers watched. His face turned from arrogance to confusion to horror to full-blown panic. Inside was a classified defense authorization. "Lieutenant Commander Sarah Briggs, Naval Special Warfare, authorized for joint leadership oversight. This officer outranks all base personnel up to and including the Colonel." Reynolds dropped the document. The room gasped. "Sergeant Torres picked it up and read it. His eyes went wide. "She outranks every single one of us." Reynolds' face drained of color. That can't be real." Briggs remained still. "Calm, it's real, Captain." He backed up like he'd been slapped. You outrank the Colonel?" "Yes, you outrank me." Briggs raised an eyebrow. "Is that what you're worried about?" Reynolds choked. Why would they send you here? Looking like someone you'd underestimate," she finished. The soldiers stared at her with newfound respect and shock. Reynolds looked like a man watching his career die in slow motion. "Commander, had no idea that was the point," she said. "I wanted to see how your leadership treated people without knowing their rank." Reynolds' throat tightened. "And you failed." The soldiers around him looked away, embarrassed on his behalf. Briggs walked past him and addressed the room. "Your captain has made assumptions about rank, respect, and appearance. That ends today." Her presence filled the room like a shockwave. Reynolds swallowed hard and slowly, very slowly, lifted his hand into a shaky salute. "See, Commander Briggs, I sincerely apologize." She didn't return the salute. Instead, she stared him down. "You do salute me because I outrank you." His hand trembled. "You salute me," she said sternly, "because you owe the uniform respect." The room was silent, dead silent. Reynolds' hand dropped to his side. He looked like he might faint. Briggs walked to the front of the room, now fully in. "Command, sit," she told Reynolds. He obeyed instantly. The same man who mocked her minutes earlier now sat like a student waiting for correction. And every soldier watched, stunned. Private Malik whispered to the guy next to him, "She really outranks all of us." Sergeant Torres nodded slowly. Looking at a real SEAL, Briggs placed her folder on the podium. "Now," she said, "let's start over." Captain Reynolds sat in the front row, shoulders tight, ears burning. A few minutes ago, he was the loudest voice in the room. Now he felt like a kid sent to the principal's office. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Briggs stood at the front of the classroom in simple PT clothes, still not wearing a uniform, yet somehow looking more in command than anyone he'd ever served under. She didn't shout, she didn't pace, she didn't slam things, she just stood there steady. "Calm, unshakable, let's begin," she said. The room straightened instinctively. "This is supposed to be a leadership development briefing," she continued. "So let me ask a simple question." Her gaze swept across the room. "How many of you believe leadership is about being obeyed?" Several hands went up slowly, including Reynolds. Briggs nodded. "And how many of you think leadership is about being respected?" Fewer hands. She smiled faintly. "There's your first problem." A nervous chuckle passed through a few soldiers. Briggs walked to the whiteboard, picked up a marker, and wrote in big, clear letters, "Fear not equal to respect." She underlined it twice. "Fear can make people follow your orders," she said, "but it will never make them follow your example." She turned and looked directly at Reynolds. "Captain, you've been in charge of this unit for what, 4 years?" "5," he muttered. "5," she nodded. "In those 5 years. How many honest disagreements have your men expressed in front of you?" Reynolds thought. The silence stretched. Finally he said, "None. They know better than to question my commands." Briggs' eyes hardened. "Exactly." The soldiers shifted uncomfortably. Private Malik stared at the floor. He could count dozens of times he'd disagreed with reckless decisions, but never dared say a word. Briggs continued, "Silence in a unit doesn't always mean respect. Sometimes it means fear of punishment. That's not strength, Captain, that's weakness." Reynolds swallowed. "And weakness gets people killed." The sentence hit the room like a shockwave. The call-out Sergeant Torres raised a cautious hand. "Permission to speak freely, ma'am?" "Granted," Briggs replied. "With respect, we were told you were coming in uniform. When you walked in like that, we thought that I was nobody," she finished. Torres winced. "Yes, ma'am," Briggs nodded. "Which tells me something important. Your respect starts with fabric, not character." She looked around. "If someone walks in wearing an officer's uniform, you stand, salute, and call them sir or ma'am without even knowing if they deserve it." She let that hang for a moment. "But if somebody walks in without the costume, you feel free to mock, belittle, and ignore them." Reynolds' throat tightened. She was describing his entire morning. "That's not discipline," Briggs said. "That's blind training. I'm not here to rip your rank away. I'm here to fix your thinking." She turned back to the board and wrote, "Rank equals responsibility, respect equals EARNED." "If your rank only works when you're wearing it," she said, "you're not a leader, you're just a costume with authority." A few soldiers looked at Reynolds. He felt every glance like a needle. The exercise. Briggs clapped her hands once. "Everyone up." Chairs scraped. Soldiers rose. She pointed at the front table. "Strip your name tapes and rank patches. Put them here." They hesitated. Reynolds frowned. "Ma'am, regulations. This is a controlled training environment approved by the Pentagon and covered under my orders." She cut in. "Put them on the table." One by one, soldiers peeled off their Velcro name and rank patches and placed them in a pile. The uniforms suddenly looked generic, anonymous. Reynolds added his last. "Now they all looked the same." "Good," Briggs said. "Now find a partner you don't usually talk to." The room shuffled awkwardly. Private Malik ended up with Sergeant Torres. Reynolds paired with a specialist he barely knew. "For the next 10 minutes, Briggs said, you will discuss one thing, the worst leadership decision you've seen on this base and what should have been done instead." The room froze. Reynolds' jaw tightened. "Ma'am, that's uncomfortable?" she asked. "Good, growth usually She started a timer. At first, voices were quiet, careful, then slowly volume rose. "Made us redo the march in full heat. Should have had water intervals. Yelled in front of everyone instead of correcting in private. We lost respect that day." Reynolds' partner hesitated, then said, "There was this one time, sir, you made Private Hale run laps till he collapsed. Some of us thought it went too far." Reynolds stared at him. I was just enforcing discipline," he replied weakly. The specialist held his gaze. "Maybe, but people were scared after that, not motivated." The words stung across the room. Briggs watched carefully as rankless uniforms finally spoke the truth to each other. The timer beeped. "Back to your seats," she ordered. They sat. Faces were different now, less guarded, more thoughtful. "Now," she said, "I want 3 people to share what they heard. No names, no finger pointing, just the lesson." Hands slowly went up. Torres spoke about communication. Malik spoke about reckless punishment. A corporal spoke about how a sergeant once covered his mistake and helped him improve instead of humiliating him. That, Briggs said, pointing at the corporal, is leadership. She turned to the room. You don't have to be perfect. You will mess up. I've messed up. But if your people are too afraid to tell you when you're wrong, your mistakes will grow until they cost lives. Her eyes softened just a little. I've seen that. I lost people that way. I do. Intend to lose any more. The room went quiet again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was respect, real respect. The private who spoke up, Briggs, scanned the back row. Private Malik, she said. He jolted. Ma'am, earlier when the captain was entertaining himself, she said dryly, I saw. Your face, you weren't laughing. He swallowed. No, ma'am, why not? He hesitated, then decided to be honest. Because it didn't feel right. Something about the way you stood there, ma'am. You looked like you'd seen worse than anything in that room. A few soldiers nodded quietly. They defelt it. Two, Briggs held his gaze. And why didn't you say anything? Malik's jaw clenched. Because it's not my place to correct a captain, ma'am. Briggs nodded slowly. That's the conflict every good soldier faces. Chain of command versus moral compass. She stepped closer. Here's the truth. You were right not to disrespect rank in the moment, but you would also be right to bring your concerns up the chain to someone who can do something about it. She looked at Reynolds, and that someone is supposed to be your leader. Reynolds felt the weight of her words. He'd never thought about it like that. To him, disagreement meant disobedience. But now, for the first time, he wondered how many warnings he'd ignored because everyone was afraid to speak. The captain's turning point. Briggs folded her arms. Captain Reynolds, stand up. He did, heart pounding. In your own words, she said. Tell this room what you learned today. Every eye locked onto him. He swallowed. He took a breath. I learned that I've been confusing obedience with respect. The room stayed silent. I thought if nobody challenged me, it meant I was a strong leader, but really, it just meant they were scared of me. He glanced at his men. I've humiliated people in front of this unit. I've made choices based on my pride, not on what was best for them. And I mocked an officer I didn't recognize instead of treating her with basic respect. He looked at Briggs, voice unsteady. Commander Briggs, I was wrong about you, about leadership, about a lot of things. Some soldiers were genuinely surprised to hear him say it out loud. I can't change what I've done, he continued, but I can change what I do from here if this unit will still have me. I want to earn back the respect I thought I already had. Briggs held his gaze for a long moment, then she nodded. That's a good start, Captain. She looked back at the soldiers. You just watched your commanding officer admit he was wrong. That's not weakness. That's strength. Reynolds exhaled slowly. For the first time in years, he felt lighter. The reveal and rebuild. Briggs walked back to the table and slid the pile of rank patches across the surface. Come get them. They lined up, silently reclaiming their identity. From this moment forward, she said, you will remember this exercise. You will remember that the man or woman behind the rank matters more than the patch itself. She paused, then added, and you will remember that somewhere out there, there is an enemy that doesn't care about your ego. They care about your weaknesses. My job is to make sure they don't find any. A few soldiers smiled grimly. Briggs continued, I'll be on this base for the next 6 months. During that time, I will be reviewing every leadership decision, every training report, every complaint, written or whispered. She looked at Reynolds, and I will be training your officers how to lead like warriors, not bullies. He nodded. Yes, ma'am. Briggs picked up the classified order again. For the record, she added, this paper giving me authority over this base, it isn't meant to scare you. It's meant to protect you from people who abuse the rank they were given. She looked them all in the eye. I am not your enemy. I am your shield, but I'm also your mirror. If you see something ugly in it, fix it. Silence, powerful silence. Then, as if moved by an invisible signal, Tor stood. He snapped into a sharp salute. Commander Briggs, he said, voice steady, thank you for being here. Malik stood next, then the rest. Soon, the entire room was on its feet, all of them saluting a woman in a simple t-shirt and PT pants, because for the first time they understood. It was never about the clothes, it was always about the character. Briggs returned the salute. Good, she said, now let's get to work.